Greetings friends, we're back with a new episode of the Witcher School series, and we've now roughly reached the middle of the series. In this episode, we're focusing on a school that's not very well documented, the School of the Manticore. Our school hails from the region of Zerikania, a name that only really shows up in the Witcher universe without much elaboration, and it first appears in the Witcher role-playing game. In The Witcher 3, we also come across a member of this school named Merton while searching for their armor, but since he already has a dedicated video on this channel, we'll only mention him in passing here. The School of the Manticore was formed by those who split from those who had already split. That may sound confusing, so let me break it down. The ones who left the original Order of Witchers went on to establish the School of the Bear. Later, a rebellion erupted within that school, leading Eva Evileye to found the School of the Viper. But it didn't stop there. Eventually, another group emerged that didn't agree with the philosophy of the School of the Viper either, and they were the ones who went on to establish what we now call the School of the Manticore. The founders of the School of the Manticore chose to head even farther east than Tirtoche. They made their way to the Elskadeg Pass, one of the routes that separates the north from the south. The Manticore Witchers, including a key figure named Iwan, began watching over the caravans that crossed from Zerikania to the north and soon realized there was potential to collaborate with them. The guy basically had a business idea forming in his head. According to Iwan, they could assist these caravans and in doing so, fill their pockets. Dialogues quickly took place between the caravan leaders and the Manticore Witchers, and eventually the merchants who needed protection in the desert struck a deal with the Witchers. For years they continued assisting caravans, but at one point their luck changed. They witnessed two Manticores attacking a caravan. They jumped into action, took down the creatures and secured the safety of the merchants. When they talked to the caravan leaders afterward, they discovered that this convoy actually belonged to the Queen of Zerikania. In fact, the leader of the caravan was one of the Queen's own mages. Once the mage realized how capable the Witchers were, he proposed a deal and invited them to the royal palace. The Witchers accepted the invitation, and when the mage explained everything to the Queen, the School of the Manticore basically became royal operatives from that point on. They even started being called Alcatil, meaning assassins, and over time, two castles were built to house these Witchers, who had now sworn an oath to protect Zerikanian travelers. The western castle was named Behelt Nar, and the eastern one was called Bielsuf Alsaria. Iwan chose to stay at the eastern one. He must have really taken a liking to Zerikania. Once he settled down, Iwan naturally tried to train new Witchers. However, since he wasn't particularly skilled in this area, he wasn't very successful. He even tried mutating the famous Zerikanian warrior women, but let's just say the process didn't quite work. Still, he managed to train many warriors in swordsmanship and grew the school in that way. So you could say the School of the Manticore was filled with Witchers who hadn't undergone full mutation. And well, how much of a Witcher can you be without mutation, right? At this point, it starts to make sense why Manticore Witchers developed such a strong interest in alchemy. They didn't have mutations, so they had to rely on other means to fight. On top of that, they started using heavy steel shields, something no other Witcher school across the continent was known for. With this much adaptation, it's worth mentioning that Iwan also changed his name to Imad Asem and became the Queen's personal Witcher. Of course, every rise in the Witcher world eventually meets a fall. In 1146, the Queen of Zerikania decides to marry off her son to a princess from Metinna, and the royal family organizes a huge caravan for the occasion. Dozens of members of the royal family join the procession, which includes just about anything and everything. Imad joins the caravan along with other Witchers. Everything is going smoothly until they reach a place called the Flame Mountains. There, a massive fire elemental appears. No matter what they do, they can't stop the creature, and the result is a disaster. Most of the school's Witchers and nearly half of Zerikania's nobility perish in the incident. For the Witchers who failed their mission, the doors that once opened are now slammed shut. With the loss of royal support, the school begins to collapse and all its Witchers scatter across the continent. What remains is a school whose name is barely known and which has become almost mythical, the School of the Manticore. Don't forget, dear friends, the Witcher School series will continue. That's it for this video. See you in the next one. Take care.